The sound echoed like a slap across the face. Laughter. Mocking, cruel, dismissive. It came from the opposing attorney, a man twice her age dressed in a $1,000 suit, his voice laced with venom as he turned to the judge and sneered. "Your Honor," he said, his words dripping with contempt, "this is ridiculous. A teenager, representing herself in court? We might as well turn this into a school debate competition." The courtroom chuckled. A few heads even shook in pity. And there she stood, Aaliyah Brooks, a 17-year-old black girl with nothing but a stack of papers in her trembling hands and a fire burning in her chest. Her voice didn't rise to meet their mockery. Not yet. She simply lifted her chin, eyes steady, her braids pulled back neatly, her second-hand blazer a size too big on her small frame. She looked fragile, out of place, powerless. But that's what they all thought, and that's what would make what came next unforgettable. Because Aaliyah was not just a defendant. She was a storm waiting to break. It all began 3 months earlier, in a quiet neighborhood where she lived with her single mother. They didn't have much, but what they had was built with dignity and sweat. Aaliyah was an honor student, an aspiring lawyer, a girl who spent nights reading legal blogs and case files while her friends scrolled through social media. But then it happened. The incident that turned her world upside down. Her landlord, a wealthy property developer named Charles Denton, a man known for exploiting tenants, accused her mother of missing rent. They hadn't. In fact, they had receipts. But Denton had power, lawyers, and influence. And when Aaliyah spoke up against him during a heated confrontation, he smirked and called her a loud little girl who should know her place. 2 weeks later, they received notice: eviction proceedings. Her mother panicked, tears spilling as she tried to gather documents and beg for legal aid. But lawyers were expensive. Advocates were busy. Time was running out. That's when Aaliyah made the choice that shocked everyone. "I'll represent us," she said quietly, clutching the notice with steady hands. Her mother laughed in disbelief, not out of mockery but fear. "Baby, this is court. This isn't a school project." "I know," Aaliyah said, her voice firm. "But I know the truth. And I won't let him take our home without a fight." Now here she was, standing across from Charles Denton, smug in his tailored suit, and his lawyer, a man named Gregory Harlow, known for tearing witnesses apart like wolves tearing at meat. The judge adjusted his glasses, looking at Aaliyah over the rim. "Miss Brooks, you are aware that you are representing yourself in this matter?" "Yes, Your Honor," Aaliyah said, her voice steady. "And you understand the risks?" "Yes, Your Honor." Gregory smirked, shuffling his papers like a predator preparing the kill. This should be quick. But the moment the trial began, something shifted. Gregory fired his first shot, presenting a forged rent ledger claiming Aaliyah's mother had missed 3 months of payment. He placed it dramatically on the evidence table, turning so the courtroom could see his smug grin. "The evidence is clear, Your Honor." Aaliyah's hands shook as she stood. Everyone expected her to crumble, to cry, to falter. But instead, she walked to the stand, lifted the document, and studied it quietly. Then she looked up. "Your Honor," she said slowly, "may I point out something?" The judge raised a brow. "Go ahead." She stepped closer, holding up the paper for the court to see. Her voice cut through the silence. "This ledger claims payments were missed in March, April, and May. But if you look closely, the signatures at the bottom of each page? They're identical. Exactly identical. Same pen stroke. Same spacing. Copy and paste." Gasps filled the room. Gregory's face stiffened. Denton shifted in his chair. "And one more thing," Aaliyah added, her voice rising now. She pulled out a crumpled receipt from her binder. "This is proof of payment for April, signed by the leasing office. They cashed our check. So unless time travel exists, this document is a forgery." The courtroom erupted. Gregory shot to his feet. "Objection. She doesn't have the training to." "Overruled," the judge said sharply, his gaze narrowing at the lawyer now. He turned back to Aaliyah. "Continue." And for the first time, the courtroom wasn't laughing at her. They were listening. But Denton wasn't about to lose so easily. He leaned forward, whispering something to Gregory, whose lips twisted into a cold smile. They had another trick up their sleeve, one that could crush Aaliyah before she even realized what was happening. The judge called for a short recess. Aaliyah sat back down, her heart pounding. She had landed the first blow, but she knew Denton's empire of power and money wasn't built on nothing. She whispered to her mother, "Stay strong. We're not done yet." What she didn't know was that the next move from Denton's team would put her future, her education, and even her mother's reputation on the line. Because Gregory was about to play dirty, in a way that would test Aaliyah's courage like never before. Denton's lawyer brings up a damaging allegation against Aaliyah herself, an accusation designed to discredit her completely in front of the court. When the recess ended, the courtroom buzzed with an uneasy tension. Aaliyah straightened her blazer and took a deep breath, whispering a prayer under her breath. She had landed one strike, but predators always came back harder after they'd been wounded. And Charles Denton was nothing if not a predator. Gregory Harlow rose with smug calm, as if the recess had given him fresh fuel. He adjusted his tie, shot Aaliyah a glance filled with quiet contempt, and began. Your Honor, while Miss Brooks is spirited in her defense, I think it's important to address the credibility of the person standing before you. The judge tilted his head, skeptical. Proceed. Gregory pulled out a folder thick with papers. He walked toward the bench deliberately, like a man savoring the moment before the blade twists. This young lady, he said, has a history of disciplinary issues. Skipping classes, talking back to teachers. And let us not forget, he paused dramatically, glancing back at the audience before landing his words like a hammer, an incident last year involving suspected shoplifting at a convenience store. The courtroom gasped. Aaliyah's mother covered her mouth in shock. Aaliyah's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what he was twisting. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to speak. That's not true. Gregory cut her off, raising his voice. Records show she was detained by store security. Though charges were dropped, the fact remains, this is a young woman with questionable integrity. Can we really trust her word against documented evidence? He slammed the folder shut and walked back to his seat with theatrical triumph. Charles Denton leaned back, smirking like the king of the courtroom. For him this was already over. Aaliyah sat frozen. Her hands were clammy, her throat tight. The murmurs in the audience stabbed into her like knives. She thought of her friends, her school, her teachers. What if this story spread? What if the judge believed it? But then her mother leaned in and whispered, "Baby, tell the truth. Don't let him write your story." And something inside Aaliyah clicked. This was exactly what Denton wanted, to humiliate her, to strip away her dignity until she folded. But she wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. She rose to her feet. Your Honor, may I respond? The judge nodded. Go ahead. Her voice was shaky at first, but each word grew stronger. Yes, I was detained at that convenience store last year. But what Mr. Harlow didn't tell you is that I wasn't shoplifting. I was buying school supplies, a notebook and pencils. The cashier made a mistake, thought I hadn't paid, and security stopped me. When the manager checked the cameras, they saw the truth. I had paid in full. The charges were dropped because I was innocent. She turned, her eyes locking on Gregory. But notice how he chose his words. He said, suspected. He left out the truth because it didn't fit the story he wanted to tell. The courtroom shifted again. Murmurs of agreement, whispers of doubt about Denton's team. And then Aaliyah delivered the knockout punch. Your Honor, if their case is so strong, why are they reaching into my personal history to smear me, instead of proving their own evidence is real? This isn't about me. This is about their lies. The judge's gavel cracked the desk, silencing the room. He stared at Gregory, his expression stern. Mr. Harlow, unless you have relevant evidence pertaining to this eviction case, I suggest you focus on the matter at hand. Gregory's smirk faltered. Denton's jaw tightened. For the first time their power seemed to waver. But they weren't done. When the hearing resumed the next day, Denton arrived with reinforcements. A witness. It was the building superintendent, a man Denton practically owned. He took the stand with rehearsed lines, swearing under oath that Aaliyah's family had been late on rent multiple times, and that they had caused disturbances in the building. The lies flowed like poison. And for a moment, it looked like Denton had regained control. Aaliyah's heart hammered. How could she fight against a man bought and paid for? The jury leaned forward, the judge scribbled notes, and Gregory smirked again as though victory was back in his grasp. But then, Aaliyah remembered something. A detail. Something the superintendent had said earlier in passing when she overheard him in the hallway weeks ago. She rose slowly, gripping her binder like a sword. Your Honor, she said, her voice calm but steady, I'd like to cross-examine the witness. The judge nodded. Proceed. The superintendent sneered at her, dismissive. But Aaliyah stepped forward with the poise of someone much older than her years. Sir, she said, you testified that my family was late on rent multiple times. Can you tell the court the exact dates? He blinked, hesitated. Oh, I don't recall the exact dates. So, you're certain we were late, but you can't remember when? Yes, that's right. Aaliyah flipped open a receipt. "This is proof we paid every month on time. Signed by the leasing office. Would you like to explain that contradiction?" The superintendent stammered. The audience shifted. "And one more thing," Aaliyah pressed. "Didn't you tell my mother just last month that you were under pressure from Mr. Denton to keep tenants in line?" The superintendent's face drained of color. His eyes darted to Denton, then back to Aaliyah. I don't recall saying that." But his hesitation was all the court needed to see. The truth was beginning to leak out. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing at Denton's team. "This testimony is questionable at best. I suggest we move on." And for the second time in 2 days, Aaliyah had taken their weapon and turned it back on them. But as she sat down, she knew this wasn't over. Denton was too powerful, too ruthless, to let a teenager best him in open court. He would come back harder, darker. And next time, he wouldn't just attack her credibility. He would go after her future. Denton pulls strings behind the scenes, threatening Aaliyah's college applications and smearing her in the media to crush her spirit before the trial concludes. The morning after her small courtroom victory, Aaliyah walked into school with her head held a little higher. For once, people looked at her differently, not as the quiet girl from the struggling family, but as the teenager who had stood toe-to-toe with a billionaire's lawyers and hadn't flinched. But by lunchtime, her world began to crumble. Her best friend shoved her phone across the cafeteria table. "Aaliyah, look." The screen was flooded with headlines. Teen defendant Aaliyah Brooks, history of trouble? Courtroom antics or genuine defense? The truth about the girl facing Denton real estate. Would you trust her? Each article carried the same undertone, seeded doubt, veiled attacks, painting her as reckless, dishonest, and undeserving of sympathy. Aaliyah's chest tightened. She scrolled down and saw pictures of herself leaving court, her expression caught mid-blink, twisted into something that looked almost sinister. Comments piled below. Another loudmouth teen playing the victim. Bet she's just looking for attention. Denton should evict the whole family. Her hands trembled. She dropped the phone. "They're destroying me." Her friend whispered, "This isn't an accident. Someone's paying for this." And she was right. Behind the scenes, Charles Denton had called in favors. He owned newspapers, had friends in television, and his reach slithered into every corner of the city. If he couldn't silence Aaliyah in court, he'd poison her reputation everywhere else. 2 nights later, another blow landed. Aaliyah sat at the kitchen table helping her younger brother with homework when her mother walked in with a white envelope. Her face was pale. "What's wrong, Mama?" Her mother's voice cracked as she held out the letter. "It's from Ridgeway University. The scholarship committee." Aaliyah snatched it open, her heart pounding. The words blurred before her eyes. "We regret to inform you that due to recent concerns regarding your character and ongoing legal disputes, your application for a full scholarship has been denied." She couldn't breathe. Her dream, her one escape, the future she had fought so hard for, was gone. Tears welled, but rage burned hotter. She crushed the letter in her fist. "This is Denton. He's behind this. He wants me to give up." Her mother touched her shoulder, whispering, "Baby, he's powerful. But don't you dare let him write your ending. This isn't over." The next day in court, Aaliyah walked in like a different person. Tired, bruised, but burning with defiance. Denton sat smugly beside Gregory, both whispering with the confidence of men who thought they had already won. When the judge asked if she was ready to continue, Aaliyah stood tall. "Yes, Your Honor. I am ready. And before this trial ends, the truth will speak louder than their lies." Gregory laughed under his breath. Denton smirked, but for the first time, there was a flicker of unease. Because this wasn't just a fight for an apartment anymore. It was a fight for her name, for her dignity, for her future. And Aaliyah Brooks wasn't about to back down. The trial reaches its peak. Denton unleashes his final, dirtiest tactic, forged documents proving the Brooks family violated their lease. But Aaliyah, with one bold move, exposes everything in front of the judge and turns the entire courtroom upside down. The courtroom was tense, the kind of silence that buzzes louder than noise. Denton's lawyer, Gregory, strode to the front with a theatrical flourish, holding a folder like it contained the very sword of victory. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "we have here documents proving the Brooks family violated their lease. Late payments, unauthorized guests, repeated offenses. This shows a consistent pattern of dishonesty. I submit them as evidence." He placed the papers before the judge with a smug smile, then turned toward Aaliyah, his voice dripping with condescension. "Miss Brooks, it seems your defense falls apart when faced with the truth. care to explain these violations?" Gasps rippled through the room. Even the spectators, neighbors, reporters, strangers, leaned forward, waiting to see the teen collapse under the weight of Denton's power. But Aaliyah didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her school binder clutched in her hands. Her voice was steady, but her eyes blazed like fire. "Yes, Your Honor. I do care to explain." She walked straight to the judge's bench, permission granted with a nod, and placed her binder down. "These documents are fake, and I can prove it." She flipped open her binder, revealing carefully preserved receipts, bank statements, and copies of every rent payment her family had ever made. One by one she slid them forward. "Notice the dates, Your Honor. Every payment was made on time." "Now," she pointed at Denton's documents, "see how the so-called late payments have dates that don't even match the months we lived there? And the signatures? That isn't my mother's handwriting." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Gregory's smug expression cracked. Denton shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But Aaliyah wasn't done. She held up one final piece of evidence, a text message thread printed and highlighted. "This is from one of Mr. Denton's property managers. He admitted the order to falsify these records came from the top. From Denton himself." The judge's eyes widened. "Mr. Gregory, Mr. Denton, is this true?" Gregory stammered, words tumbling over themselves. Denton, red-faced, tried to rise, but the judge's gavel struck down like thunder. "Order. This court will not tolerate fabricated evidence. What I see here is not just harassment of a tenant, but a calculated attempt to ruin a young woman's future." The gavel slammed again. "Case dismissed. Miss Brooks, you and your family are hereby cleared of all charges. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into Mr. Denton's practices." Court adjourned. The room erupted. Reporters rushed out to break the story. Spectators clapped. Even the bailiff gave a small nod of respect toward Aaliyah. And there she stood, 17 years old, a black teen girl who had walked in underestimated, mocked, and crushed under a billionaire's shadow, but had walked out the victor. By the next morning, the headlines told a different story. Teen exposes billionaire's lies in courtroom showdown. Aaliyah Brooks, the girl who beat Denton. Her scholarship denial was overturned, this time with a personal letter of apology from Ridgeway University. Denton's empire began to crack as regulators and the press dug deeper into his corrupt dealings. And Aaliyah? She stood taller than ever. She had defended not just her family's home, but her dignity, her name, and her future. Power and money can silence many voices but not the truth. And sometimes, the person the world underestimates most is the one destined to shake it to its core. If you were in Aaliyah's shoes, standing alone against a billionaire in court, would you have had the courage to fight? Or would the pressure have forced you to back down? If stories of resilience and poetic justice move you, don't just watch, join our community. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful true-to-life stories where the underdog rises, the truth wins, and justice is served.